Welcome to this Active IQ eClinic training video for the Level 2 Certificate in Fitness Instructing Gym. Before starting this eClinic, please ensure you have the matching worksheet ready, as you will be prompted during the video to answer questions based on the content of the video. The worksheet is an amendable document allowing you to complete sections relating to each part of this eClinic as you go. Once fully complete, you will need to submit this worksheet in order to receive your certificate of attendance. More details on this will be provided at the end of the video. Aims and objectives of the session. So by the end of this eClinic, you'll be able to list and briefly describe the units of the qualification, describe the unit assessment guidelines for this Level 2 Certificate in Fitness Instructing Gym, and to know the evidence the learner is required to complete within each unit. So let's have a look at the qualification structure. There are 6 units within this qualification. Unit 1 covers anatomy and physiology for exercise, and this is at level 2. Unit 2 is entitled Know How to Support Clients Who Take Part in Exercise and Physical Activity. Unit 3 is entitled Health, Safety and Welfare in a Fitness Environment. Unit 4 is Principles of Exercise, Fitness and Health. Unit 5 is Planning Gym-Based Exercise. And Unit 6 is Instructing Gym-Based Exercise. The guided learning hours linked to this qualification are 157 and the notional learning hours are 230. So we're now going to look at Unit 1, Anatomy and Physiology for Exercise. So what's required to achieve Unit 1? So learners must complete a multiple choice theory exam paper that is externally set and marked by Active IQ. You must allocate and invigilate this external theory paper using the question and learner answer sheets provided by Active IQ. Learners must pass this external theory paper by answering the questions and scoring 70% or above. So that's at least 35 correct answers from the 50 questions possible. The invigilator completes the invigilation report following the assessment to document which learners completed the external theory exam and returns this to Active IQ along with the completed learner answer sheets. Please ensure that you photocopy each learner's answer sheet along with the invigilation report before sending the originals to Active IQ for marking via recorded delivery. Once results are received from Active IQ confirming the learner has passed, the assessor can then update the results sheet within the learner achievement portfolio and sign and date the individual learning plan / record of assessment at the front of the lap to sign off Unit 1. Please note, however, if you are approved to internally mark, this process will be slightly different. If you're not currently approved to internally mark and you're interested in this, then please contact your allocated EV. So let's have a look at Unit 2, Know How to Support Clients in Physical Activity. Okay, so what is required to achieve Unit 2? There are 2 main areas here. The first is the completion of an externally set client interview form that is internally assessed by the centre. The learner must achieve 12 or more from the allocated 15 possible marks. A couple of pointers in relation to the client interview. The client interview and the information collected feeds into the programme card that will be designed later within Unit 5. Also remember to ensure learners complete the BMI recording in line with the height and weight recordings and that SMART goals are set. Also for this unit, learners must complete an externally set additional set of questions that are internally assessed by the centre. And the learner must achieve 8 out of the possible 8 marks here. Okay, so let's take a look at Unit 3, Health, Safety and Welfare in a Fitness Environment. So let's have a look at what's required to achieve Unit 3. So in order to achieve this unit, the learners must complete an externally set worksheet that is internally assessed by the centre. So you can set this as a classroom exercise, or it could be set as homework, and the learner can attempt this as many times as required in order to meet the minimum required marks. The learners must pass the worksheet by answering the 19 questions and scoring at least 56 of the possible 69 marks that are available. In addition, learners must also achieve the minimum marks required within each of the questions, and that's indicated within the learner achievement portfolio. When marking this, the assessors can use the sample answers provided by ActiveIQ as guidance when marking the worksheet. Please note that this is only guidance, however, and the assessor should use their professional judgment as well. So when the assessor is happy that the worksheet has met the criteria for a pass, written feedback is to be documented at the end of the worksheet in order to aid learner development. So let's now take a look at Unit 4. This is Principles of Exercise, Fitness and Health. Okay, so what is required for units to achieve Unit 4? So learners must complete an externally set multiple choice theory paper that this time is internally marked. The learner must pass this internal theory paper by answering the questions and scoring 70% or above. So in this case, this represents at least 23 correct answers from the 32 questions. Okay, it's time to complete the first task in your worksheet. Okay, so what you need to do now is pause the screen. Turn to section 1 in your worksheet and answer the questions based on the information we have just covered. Once you have completed these questions, you can hit the play button and continue to watch this video. Okay, so let's look at Unit 5, Planning Gym-Based Exercise. So what is required to achieve Unit 5? Unit 5 is achieved via the completion of externally set planning documents that are internally assessed by the centre. There are 4 main sections and requirements for Unit 5. There's a worksheet or a professional discussion, and the learners can decide whether to complete the worksheet or the professional discussion. Either forms of evidence could be submitted for this unit, and you will find pro formas within the learner achievement portfolio. There's a PARQ form. There's a program card for the gym session that details the safety checks, warm-up, main CV, resistance, cool-down and cool-down stretch exercises. And there are also session plans for 1 CV exercise, 1 resistance exercise, 1 free weight exercise and 1 body weight exercise, detailing appropriate exercise adaptations for the following special populations: 14 to 16 age range, older adults, pre and postnatal clients and disabled clients. Please note that the exercise selection for the session plans must come from the program card itself. Okay, so we're going to have a look at these 4 areas in a little bit more detail. So we start with the completion of an externally set worksheet that is internally assessed by the centre. Option 1 would be a worksheet format for this. So if selected, learners must pass this worksheet by answering 13 questions and scoring 28 or above of the possible 35 marks. Remember as well, learners must also achieve the minimum marks that are set within each question. This will be clearly indicated within the learner achievement portfolio. The second option is a professional discussion. So if using a professional discussion, this assessment must be pre-planned and carried out in a suitable environment. The learner is recorded describing to the assessor how they would collect and use client information and how they plan and agree goals with their clients. In order to capture this information, the professional discussion must either be taped and counter-referenced into the agenda sheets or written up by the assessor during the discussion. So PAR-Q forms. So the PAR-Q form needs to be completed in full by the learner's client, ensuring that all questions are answered and that all relevant signatures and date are present. So the third requirement within this Unit 5 involves the learner creating a program card. So the learner needs to complete a 45 to 60 minute session with their client. The program card needs to be completed in full by the learner and must include safety checks and any special arrangements or adaptations to be made to the session, the equipment activities to be used in the warm-up, main CV, fixed, free weight and body weight resistance components, cool down and cool down stretch components. So the program card should include 3 types of CV exercise. So that's 3 different modes of CV exercise. And these are consisted of the warm-up, the main CV and the cool-down components. 4 types of fixed resistance exercises, 4 types of free weight exercises and 3 types of body weight exercises. The program card must also include the timings of the components, including the chosen workouts or target training zones for the CV components. For example, 8 to 10 kilometers per hour, RPE 6 to 8, and the allocated sets and reps for the resistance components, i.e. 2 times 12. In the program card, you'll see there is a section for learners to detail the key teaching points for each of the chosen exercises as well. That must be completed. Diagrams for all stretch components. And the program card needs to reflect the session the learner is going to teach within their practical assessment. Assessors can use a sample program card provided by ActiveIQ as guidance when marking these programs. This is a good indicator, especially when assessors are new to this qualification. And once complete, the assessor can then sign and date the individual learning plan record of achievement within the learner achievement portfolio to show it is completed and meets the required standard. So here you can see an exemplar of a program card. These exemplars can be found within the specific assessment guidance and give a good indication of the level required from the learner. Pause the screen if you need to take in more information and absorb the detail within this exemplar. Okay, and here you can see an exemplar for some additional components within the program card, including the resistance, body weight exercises and cool down. So let's have a look at the session plans and what's required within these. So a single session plan needs to be completed for each of the following. So learners must select one exercise from each of the listed areas below, and these must come from their original program card. So the session plans include cardiovascular equipment exercise, so this should be the main component, resistance machine lift, free weight lift, and 1 body weight exercise. So the session plans for the 4 selected exercises should detail the allocated reps or sets, timings or expected RPE level, so information about intensity, the exercise and muscle groups, the teaching points, appropriate exercise alternatives, and also appropriate adaptations for each of the following population groups. So 14 to 16 age range, older adults, pre and postnatal clients and disabled clients. In terms of the last one there, D, disabled clients, ActiveIQ would recommend that learners select a different form of disability for each of their 4 session plans, and that these disabilities are actually identified specifically. They can then detail how their chosen exercises would be adapted to meet these clients' needs. So here we can see an exemplar of a session plan detailing CV main component. So in this case, the mode of CV is the bike. So pause the screen if you need to take in the information. This will give you a good guide as to what is expected from learners. And again, these are provided within the specific assessment guidance. So here we can see an exemplar of a session plan detailing what will be required within the category of a free weight lift, free weight exercise. So in this example, it's a dumbbell fly. Again, pause the screen if you need to take in the information and what is required from the learner. Okay, it's time to complete the task in your worksheet. Okay, so what you need to do now is pause the screen. Turn to section 2 in your worksheet and answer the questions based on the information we have just covered. Once you have completed these questions, you can hit the play button and then continue to watch this video. Unit 6, Instructing Gym-Based Exercise. So Unit 6 is achieved by the learner completing externally set documents that are internally assessed by the centre. This falls under 3 main categories. You have a summative observation checklist and assessor feedback forms. You also have formative observation checklist, and there are associated assessor feedback forms with that as well, and a session and self-evaluation form. Okay, so let's have a look at some of those previous areas in a little bit more detail. So the summative observation. So the assessor needs to observe the learner demonstrating instruction of the exercise on the planned program card and the 4 session plans. The learner will need to demonstrate 2 types of cardiovascular equipment, or modes if you like, 3 resistance machine lifts, 3 free weight lifts, and 1 body weight exercise out of the planned exercises from the program card. The assessor will need to choose from the previously planned exercise which ones they want to see instructed during this assessment, this summative assessment, and which ones will be observed during the formative assessment. The exercises that are observed at the formative stage should not be repeated at the summative stage. So in summary, between the formative and the summative assessment, the learner is going to teach the whole of their program card. There are no requirements relating to the type of exercise or fitness level of the client used in either this or the formative assessment. The observation needs to ensure that all criteria is met within each component. It is acceptable for the assessor to move the learner on to the next component if that learner has shown competency and sufficiently met the required criteria. Prior to the observation, the learner needs to be briefed on what is expected of them during the assessment, and the assessor uses a summative observation checklist and feedback sheet to record the feedback from the session and to document any questions that they will ask the learner at the end of the session during the viva in order to determine the learner's underpinning knowledge, if this is applicable and necessary. So here you can see the summative observation assessment checklist. A few things to note here is the date is at the top, that must be filled out. This checklist is separated into the 3 sections. Section A, which represents starting the session, Section B, which represents delivering the exercise session, and Section C, which represents ending the exercise session. So please note the bold areas, which we're going to cover in the next few slides. Those bold areas represent the rows within criteria B1, B3, B12 and B14. Also note that the assessor must record at the very bottom row
whether the learner is competent or not competent. Observation checklist. So for Unit 6, when assessing the observation, the assessor will use the observation checklist that's provided within the Learner Achievement Portfolio. The assessor needs to complete each box on the checklist with either a tick, a cross, a bullet point or a Q. So if the assessment criteria has been met for each component, place a tick in the box. If it has not been met or not seen, place a cross in the box. If the assessment criteria has been met but you would like to make a comment, and this could either be positive or constructive, place a dot in the box. If you would like to ask a question to clarify knowledge and understanding, place a Q in the box. A note on this, however, a question cannot replace a tick. So if you do not observe a particular assessment criteria, then you cannot ask a question as almost like a get out of jail card. Also on questions, if a question is recorded, a tick or a cross must also be recorded in the same box to indicate whether the learner is competent or not within that criteria. So an overall refer can be made in 3 ways. If the learner receives 1 or more X in any horizontal row, so the assessor can use their discretion, and if an X is generated within a non-bold area, then this can be deemed a referral. If the learner receives a cross in a shaded box, and if the learner incurs a high proportion of crosses throughout the assessment and is then deemed not competent. Okay, so let's have a look at some reassessment guidance then. So if a learner refers their observed assessment, the assessor may determine what course of action would be the most suitable method in order for the learner to confirm future competence, i.e. whether the learner needs to complete the whole assessment again or just part of the assessment, unless the specific assessment guidance states otherwise. In all cases, the assessor must make a judgment as to when it is appropriate to carry out the reassessment. So there may be cases where this is done almost immediately after the learner's referred assessment, or it could be agreed upon at a later date or time. And typically you would use that option when there are a lot of things to work on and the learner needs to go away, reflect on their feedback, improve, and then come back for assessment. So session and self-evaluation document. Again, this is a requirement for Unit 6. So learners must conclude and review the session with their client and complete a session evaluation immediately after the session has been completed. This should be done in an appropriate area that is quiet, and an adequate amount of time needs to be given for the learner to complete it. Suggestion here would be a minimum of 15 minutes. The learner needs to give as much information as possible on each question on the review, and guide the learner away from documenting brief answers. Ask them to expand on areas if they're very brief initially. Once you feel the document meets the criteria to pass, record some constructive feedback based on the learner's self-evaluation skills. And then the assessor can sign and date the individual learning plan record of assessment within the Learner Achievement Portfolio in order to show it is complete and meets the required standard. Feedback. So once the session review has been assessed and any questions have been asked, the assessor should then inform the learner if they are competent or not competent based on the skills observed during the summative assessment. The assessor needs to highlight the outcome of the assessment by circling either the competent or not competent section within the summative observed checklist. Following this, the assessor needs to read out their feedback to the learner that has been recorded during the session and highlight any areas of good practice and areas where the learner's skills need to be further developed. The assessor should give the opportunity to the learner to ask any questions in regards to the comments made or the assessment decision. If the learner is happy with the feedback and comments, the assessor can then sign this off in the record of assessment within the front of the learner achievement portfolio. So what we're going to have a look at next on the next slide is this process. It's a whole process of observation within this summative assessment for Unit 6 in a step-by-step guide.
So we're now going to have a look at the stages of observation. We're going to look at the 7 stages in the order that they should occur. So step 1 is the initial learner briefing. Within this step, you'll be looking to cover the assessment criteria, including showing the learner the actual assessment criteria checklist. You'd also look to explain to the learner how the assessment is going to work and at what stage various things are going to happen. And you'd also look to cover the learner appeals process and their right to access that appeals process. Step 2 is direct observation of performance. Step 3 is where the learner, maybe in conjunction with the client, gather feedback on the performance that's just occurred. Step 4 is where the learner will complete their evaluation, and as stated before, 15 minutes minimum given to that particular process. So the documentation that goes with that is the session review document. Step 5 is the assessor looking through the actual session and the session self-evaluation document, followed by any questions. Remember, with the questions, we'll be looking at open and non-leading questions. Step 6 is where the assessor gives their decision. So this is the overall decision, whether they're competent or not competent. And step 7 is the assessor feedback. So we'll be looking at constructive, concise feedback that's relevant to the performance criteria and is well documented in terms of a written format and also presented well to the learner verbally. Active IQ have put together some assessment top tips which we're going to run through now. This is for best practice in order to help you with your assessment. This can be applied to this qualification or any other Active IQ qualification. So let's take you through these now. Assessment plans should be completed at the beginning of the course to confirm an agreement between the assessor and the learner as to what is to be assessed. A record of achievement should be completed as the learner achieves to confirm assessment decisions, so it should be completed on an ongoing basis. These should also accurately reflect the assessment as they do form part of the appeals process. Make sure you explain fully the stages of observation to the learner as part of your briefing prior to any practical assessment. Only assess to the assessment criteria listed and not what you would like to see from the learner. When giving feedback and assessing the learner's session and self-evaluation, remember that you are assessing the learner's ability to self-evaluate, and you shouldn't really be commenting on their performance within the practical session. So a learner could acknowledge particularly poor performance within that session as part of the self-evaluation. When assessing worksheets, ensure that there is a clear audit trail and this is visible. So mark each question with ticks, crosses and circle marks awarded. Allocate marks given for each pertinent answer rather than deducting marks. So we're really looking to mark by inclusion and not exclusion. Give annotations throughout where appropriate and a clear overall decision at the end. So this will help the learner with their future development. If a worksheet has 6 marks allocated to a question, then the likelihood you're looking for 6 pertinent answers. Ensure your learners understand this principle prior to completing the worksheets. When a learner has submitted a worksheet for assessment and it is a referral, the worksheet should be signed dated with feedback given. Ensure the learner is given appropriate feedback and return to the learner for remedial action. When a worksheet is resubmitted, mark in a different colour ink and sign, date and give feedback once again. So the different colour ink will help with the assessment audit trail. If you need to use another sheet of paper, just insert this into the learner achievement portfolio. Ensure feedback is always objective, positive and developmental. Feedback should be specific, so good work or well done, you met the standard, are very generic and give little guidance to the learner in terms of their future development. And this could be applicable if the learner has produced good work, or if the learner has produced work that needs remedial action or needs some developmental points to improve the standard. Use the qualification guidance document for each qualification you deliver, in particular specific assessment guidance. Are you familiar with the evidence requirements, the standard that's required from the awarding organisation, and the prerequisites for the qualification? The qualification guidance will provide you with all of these areas. When moving learners on during a summative observation, please avoid giving a learner an indication as to their competence by saying, "That's great, move on." Instead, play your poker face, look at a neutral statement that doesn't infer competence, just in case you do reach a position where the learner has maybe referred and they get the impression that they were performing very well from the language or body language used. When you're assessing, and particular worksheets, pay attention to the verb. If the assessment criteria asks you, the learner, to describe, you need to see a description and not a list, for example. If the assessment criteria asks the learners to demonstrate, the learner must be seen to complete a demonstration. When observing a learner, avoid spending your time writing and looking at the assessment criteria, as you may miss the learner's performance. So make sure there's a balance between recording and also observing. And finally, if you see a box within a learner achievement portfolio, then it probably has to be populated, so fill it in.
It's now time to complete the final task in your worksheet. Okay, what you need to do now is pause the screen, turn to section 3 in your worksheet and answer the questions based on the information you have just covered. Once you have completed these questions, then you can hit the play button and continue to watch this video. Okay, well done. So now we're just going to have a look at the aims and objectives that we set out to originally achieve within this e-clinic. So hopefully now, by the end of this e-clinic, you'll be able to list and briefly describe the units of the qualification. You'll hopefully be able to describe the unit assessment guidelines for this Q2FIG. And you'll also know the evidence the learner is required to complete within each unit.
Congratulations for completing this e-clinic. In order to gain your certificate of attendance, you now need to do two things. Ensure you've finished the worksheets, and importantly that you have filled in all the information on the front page of the worksheet so that we know who you are. Save your work and send the worksheets to worksheets@activeiq.co.uk in order for it to be marked. Also, we would like you to complete a SurveyMonkey questionnaire by following the link provided. Once we have received these and the worksheets have been marked, we will email you your certificate of attendance within the next 10 working days of receiving the completed document. Should you require any more information about these e-clinics or attending our live e-clinics, then email your allocated EV or go to our website www.activeiq.co.uk and visit the centres page. Thank you for completing this e-clinic, and we do hope to see you again soon. There are a number of ways that ActiveIQ can support you and provide further guidance. ActiveIQ offer training days and e-clinics for centres to attend in order to support you on how to assess, deliver and internally verify each qualification. We have standardisation activities that are embedded within the monthly e-zine, so do make sure you subscribe to that. The training days and e-clinics are free to attend, and we offer both pre-recorded and live e-clinics. Details of all of these can be found on our website www.activeiq.co.uk, and if you move to the Centres and the Centre Training Days tab, you will find all the information you need. ActiveIQ also offers further learning. Why not access the LinkedIn CPD available on Talking Active Leisure Qualifications that can be found in the following link. You need to look for the posts that start with the diamond symbol. Read the article, research the papers, reflect on and evaluate the information, and provide any opinions or thoughts via the comment box. Reflections that sufficiently contribute to the discussion will be rewarded with evidence of 1 hour of CPD.